All right, welcome back, everyone. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into what's going on in Bangladesh.
Yeah, things are pretty tense there right now.
Definitely. We've got this interim government that just came to power after a lot of unrest.
Right.
But the old ruling party, the Awami League, they're not going away quietly.
Nope, they're planning this big demonstration on Noor Hossain Day. It's gonna be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, Nur Hussein Day is it's not just any random day, is it?
Oh, definitely not. It's a very significant day in
Yeah.
Bangladesh's history.
And the interim government has banned this demonstration, which, well, it just adds another layer to this whole thing.
Yeah, it's a pretty bold move from the interim government. Shows they're not afraid to, um, flex their muscles a bit.
Yeah. So before we dive into the current situation, I think it's important to give our listeners some context. So, who was Nur Hossain, and why is this day so important in Bangladesh?
So, Noor Hossain, he's a young activist, and he was killed back in 1987 during protests against the rule of Hussein Mohammed Ershad, who was an autocratic leader at the time.
Oh, okay.
And his death, it really galvanized the opposition movement, became a symbol of resistance against, oppression.
Right.
And those protests, they eventually led to the fall of Ershad's regime. So you can kind of see why the Awami League might choose this particular day for their comeback, so to speak.
Yeah, it's like they're trying to tap into that historical energy, connect their struggle to that legacy of fighting for democracy.
Exactly. It's a powerful message for sure.
Now, the interim government, they came to power after some pretty chaotic events, didn't they?
Right. Back on August 5th, the previous government, led by Sheikh Hasina and the Awami League, was, well, they were ousted. There were attacks on Awami League offices.
Yeah.
And key figures like Sheikh Hasina herself and her sister, they fled to India.
Wow, so that was a pretty sudden and dramatic shift in power.
Yeah, definitely.
So this demonstration, it's more than just about Nur Hussein Day. It's the Awami League's first real attempt to, uh, show they're still relevant, that they're still a force to be reckoned with.
I think you hit the nail on the head.
And the interim government's response is really interesting. I mean, they haven't just said, no, you can't protest.
Right.
They've used some really strong language,
Hmm?
calling the Awami League fascist, which that's a pretty serious accusation.
It definitely is. And it seems very deliberate, like
Yeah.
they're trying to really discredit the Awami League, paint them as the villains.
And the Awami League, of course, they're saying this demonstration is all about fighting for the people of Bangladesh, that they're standing up against the unjust removal of their government. They're even using terms like fundamentalist forces, which is pretty loaded language, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, fundamentalist forces. That's a term that carries a lot of weight in Bangladesh.
Right. It kind of plays on fears of religious extremism, right?
Absolutely. They're,
Yeah.
they're trying to make it seem like the interim government is a threat to Bangladesh's, its secular identity.
Yeah, it's definitely a way of trying to rally support, frame themselves as the defenders of democracy and secularism.
Right.
So we've got these two sides, both using pretty strong rhetoric, and they're heading for a confrontation on this very symbolic day. What do you think? What could actually happen on Nur Hussein Day?
Well, it's tough to say for sure. I mean, the Awami League, they might just go ahead with their demonstration, and that could lead to, a clash with security forces.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
maybe they'll do something more symbolic,
Yeah.
like a smaller gathering or an online campaign, something to avoid a direct confrontation.
Yeah, it's a risky situation for them either way, right? If they back down, it makes them look weak.
Exactly.
But if they defy the ban, things could get out of control.
For sure. And the interim government, they've made it pretty clear they're not afraid to use force. Their press secretary said that any, rallies, gatherings, processions, anything like that, they'll be met with a firm response from law enforcement.
Firm response, huh?
Yeah.
So there's a real chance this could turn violent.
I'd say so.
It's a real game of chicken, isn't it?
Absolutely. And that's what makes this situation so fascinating. The Awami League, they're taking a big gamble. They're trying to regain their footing, appeal to the public, but, their strategy, it could backfire.
Especially if the protests don't get much traction or if the government's crackdown is, particularly harsh, this could easily escalate into a much bigger crisis.
You're not wrong. And that's where things start to get really interesting. We need to start looking beyond Nur Hossain Day itself.
Right.
What does all of this mean for the future of Bangladesh? How will this power struggle play out in the long term?
Yeah, those are the big questions, and those are the questions we're going to be exploring in the rest of this deep dive. So stick with us. We'll be right back.
It's like this whole Nur Hossain Day thing. It's become like a focal point.
Yeah, it's almost like a miniature version of the whole power struggle.
Right. And both sides, they're really pulling out all the stops to, to try and win over public opinion.
We were talking before about the Awami League, using that term, fundamentalist forces.
Right.
That's a pretty hefty accusation to throw around.
It is.
Is there really any evidence to back that up? Or is that just, political maneuvering?
Yeah, I think that's a question worth exploring a bit more.
Yeah.
Bangladesh, they have this, kind of complex relationship with religion and politics. Officially, it's a secular country,
Yeah.
but Islam plays a big role in society,
Right. So are they basically saying that the interim government is trying to change that?
That seems to be the gist of their argument. They're kind of playing on this fear that the interim government might be, sympathetic to groups that want to bring stricter Islamic law into politics.
Okay.
But the article we're looking at, it doesn't really give any specifics about the interim government's policies or their religious affiliations or anything like that.
So it's a claim that needs a bit more investigation.
Definitely, we can't just take the Awami League's word for it.
Right. We need to see if the interim government is actually, if their actions actually match up with those accusations.
Exactly.
And this whole thing, it has implications that go way beyond Bangladesh, right?
Absolutely. Bangladesh is it's a major player in South Asia,
Mm-hmm.
and this political instability, it could have a domino effect on the whole region.
Like what are some of the potential consequences we could see on a global scale?
Well, it could definitely impact Bangladesh's, their relationships with their neighbors, especially India. Remember, Sheikh Hasina and her sister, they fled to India after their government was overthrown.
Right. So India's got to be paying close attention to all this, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. They have a huge stake in a stable Bangladesh. They share a long border, and they have deep ties economically and in terms of security. Any unrest in Bangladesh, it could spill over and create problems for India.
So they're probably trying to walk a fine line here, right?
Yeah, trying to figure out how to deal with this whole situation without getting too involved.
Right. And it's not just India. Other global powers like the U.S. and China, they're watching this unfold too, right?
Yeah, definitely. Bangladesh is strategically important.
Yeah.
And everyone wants to see it remain stable.
So this whole Nur Hossain Day demonstration, it could become, like a flashpoint for international attention.
Yeah, absolutely. The
Right.
world is watching to see what happens next.
Okay. And back in Bangladesh, what's the interim government saying about their plans for Nur Hossain Day?
Well, their press secretary, he basically warned that there would be a firm response from law enforcement if the Awami League defies the ban.
Firm response, huh?
Yeah, it's not totally clear what that means, but it definitely suggests they're willing to use force to keep things under control.
Which is that's a bit worrying. Could we see like arrests or violence or even worse?
It's hard to say for certain,
You
but the language the government is using is, it's definitely a bit concerning. There's a real chance of clashes between protesters and security forces, and things could easily escalate from there.
So it sounds like this demonstration, it could be a real catalyst for violence.
Yeah, I think the potential is definitely there, and that's what makes this whole situation so tense. The stakes are incredibly high.
Okay. So as we think about the long-term implications of all this, we need to keep those high stakes in mind. It's not just about who's in charge. It's about the future of democracy in Bangladesh.
Exactly. It's about fundamental human rights, the rule of law.
And we can't forget the historical context either. We've talked about Nur Hossain's legacy, but Bangladesh, it has this this long and turbulent history when it comes to politics.
Yeah, coups, power struggles, corruption, all of that. It's nothing new.
So even if things don't, even if there's no violence on Nur Hossain Day, those underlying tensions, they're still there.
Oh, yeah. They're definitely still simmering beneath the surface.
Right. And that's something we need to keep in mind as we watch this story unfold. The outcome of this whole power struggle, it won't just depend on the Awami League and the interim government.
Right.
It'll depend on the people of Bangladesh and the international community.
I think you're spot on there.
So what's next in all this?
Well, the next few days, they're going to be critical. Will the Awami League back down? Will the government, will they actually follow through on their threats? How will the international community react? There's a lot of moving parts here.
And for our listeners, for those who want to dive even deeper into all this,
Yeah.
what are some things they can do to stay informed, to keep up with this story as it develops?
Well, I think the most important thing is to follow the news from reputable sources, both within Bangladesh and internationally.
Okay.
They can look for different perspectives on this situation, and they can always do their own research on the history of Bangladesh, the Awami League, the interim government, all of that. There's a ton of information out there for anyone who wants to learn more.
And that's what the deep dive is all about, right? We give you the framework, the context, the key questions,
Right.
and then it's up to you to explore further, to form your own informed opinions about all of this.
Absolutely.
It's it feels like what happens over the next few days or even weeks, it could really have a big impact, not just on Bangladesh, but on the whole region.
Definitely. And I think, as we've been talking about, one of the big unknowns here is the international community.
Right.
How they respond could really make a difference.
Yeah, we talked about how India wants to see, a stable Bangladesh.
Right.
But what about other global powers, like the U.S. or China? What are they thinking about all this, and how might they get involved?
Well, for both the U.S. and China, Bangladesh is strategically important.
Yeah.
It's a growing economy, and it's a key player in South Asia, and it's a potential partner in all sorts of areas:
Right.
trade, security, you name it.
So they're not just gonna sit back and watch.
Exactly.
The U.S. has they've always been a supporter of democracy and human rights in Bangladesh.
Right.
So they'll be keeping a close eye on how the interim government handles all this, especially if there's any kind of crackdown on peaceful protests.
Yeah.
In China. What are their interests in Bangladesh?
Well, China has been, they've been pouring money into infrastructure projects in Bangladesh.
Yeah.
As part of their Belt and Road Initiative, right? And they see Bangladesh as a key part of their, global trade network.
So they want stability too.
Oh, yeah, Beverly.
So you've got these, competing interests, all these different players.
Right.
It's a complicated situation, to say the least.
It really is. And it's it's a good reminder that global politics isn't just about it's not just about big countries fighting for power, It's about the lives of everyday people who get caught in the middle.
Yeah. And that brings us back to the to the core of what we've been talking about today. We've looked at the history, the political maneuvering, the potential for violence, the international implications, all of that.
It's a lot to unpack.
But at the end of the day, this is about the people of Bangladesh.
Absolutely. Their voices, their choices, their resilience, it's all going to determine what happens next.
So as we wrap things up here, I want to leave our listeners with this thought.
Okay.
The situation in Bangladesh, it's it's fluid, it's uncertain, and there are a lot of potential pitfalls.
Right.
But it's also a story about about human agency, about people fighting for a better future.
It really is.
And that's a story worth paying attention to, don't you think?
Absolutely. Keep watching, keep learning, keep asking the tough questions.
And that's what the deep dive is all about.
That's right.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. We'll see you next time.